I'm here in Vietnam, and I have to say that I have with me what I think is one of the best travel cameras of 2025. And let's find out why. So I have with me on this trip in Vietnam the OM-3 by OM Systems, and it is a micro four thirds camera. It has a 20 megapixel sensor that is stacked, which is quite important. Even though it's not a full frame or an APS-C sensor, there are quite a few benefits that come with a micro four thirds sensor. And some people will complain that this is just a 20 megapixel sensor, but one thing that makes it kind of unique is that it is the cheapest sensor out there, or the cheapest camera out there with a sensor that is stacked. And a little bit more on why that's important in just a bit. This camera has a retro look, which I really love, and it looks very similar to the OM-1 film camera from the 1980s. It has a few dials and enough buttons to customize, although I would have liked if it had more. It has a dedicated computational photography button to quickly access these modes. If you want to know how to use every single one of those, there's a link in the video description below. You also get a color and effects dial, which makes it really fun to shoot JPEGs with certain looks straight out of camera. And here are some JPEGs with a custom recipe. You have a dial to quickly switch between video and photography, and a lot of space for custom modes. It's small, so don't expect a grip, but I have bigger hands, but honestly, this didn't bother me since my mindset was set on this being small and compact. So the OM-3 is solid. Whoa. It's a very nice camera. It's very nicely built. And another cool thing is that it has a truly IP rating of 53. So that means it has protection against some light rain and dust. From my research, I think this is one of the few cameras out there that have a true and certified IP rating. So perfect for travel in case it rains while you're out there filming or photographing all your cool travel stuff. The reason why a stack sensor is important is because the sensor reads data super fast. There's a faster readout, so there's very minimal rolling shutter. You can get fast burst shooting up to 120 frames per second in RAW with certain lenses. And it helps in computational modes when the different frames have to be combined in camera. Also, if you want a stack sensor, you have to look at the top of the line models in other brands like the Sony A1 Mark II, the Canon R3, or the Nikon Z6 III with a partially stacked sensor. Another reason why this camera is great for travel is the size of its lenses. They're so compact. For example, I have a 12-45, which has a 34mm equivalent of 24-90. I also have a 45-150mm lens, which in 35mm full frame equivalent, it's roughly 90-300mm. And I'm able to get landscapes, get really close up to wildlife, and it's really cool. And I don't have to lug along with me like a super telephoto zoom, like a 70-200 or something like that if I were to be bringing or filming on a full frame camera. And that is a huge amount of reach with only two small compact lenses. I go all the way from 24-300. I can get landscape, street photography, wildlife if I can catch it, but super handy, super useful for travel. Photo quality on this is great. On top of the 20 megapixels, you can also shoot high-res composite modes up to 50 megapixels handheld and 80 megapixels when you have this on a tripod. These modes though are only as good at how still your scene is, so if you have a lot of motion, you get motion artifacts. It has in-body image stabilization of 6.5 stops, which I found very handy, especially using a telephoto zoom lens on this camera handheld. The image quality in both JPEG and RAW is really nice, and because it is a micro four thirds at higher ISO, you do get more noise, and low light performance is not the best, but good enough for most scenarios. The main selling point in OM system cameras is computational photography. The OM-3 has a ton. Some of my favorite ones are the graduated ND for landscapes and focus stacking in camera. Video on the OM-3 is good enough for travel in my opinion. You get 4K up to 60 frames per second and 240 frames per second in HD. You get a headphone and a microphone jack. You get a micro HDMI port, which is expected for such a small body. You can also shoot in log on this camera, and specifically in OM log in 420 10-bit. Its log profile is OM log 400 with a base ISO of 400, which is a lot lower compared to a base ISO of 800 in other cameras. I did find that log on this camera felt more like a extra flat picture profile as opposed to a true log-like picture profile like Canon C-Log3 or Sony S-Log3 for example. However, with some tweaking in post, I was still able to get a very good color and a very good grade out of the video on this camera. Autofocus in video is good enough for travel, although sometimes tracking was a bit on and off. If you have people detection turned on, for example, sometimes they get confused. If you're trying to film a building or an animal, you have to turn that off or switch it to another object detection mode. And sometimes that can be a little bit of an annoyance. But overall, autofocus I found that is decent, but in my experience, not as seamless as when I'm shooting on a Sony camera or a Canon camera. So I got right now image stabilization turned on digitally and also on the sensor shift, and stabilization set to high. Let's see what this looks like as I walk about. So I usually always bring with me a backpack and carry a bunch of gear with it. And over time, when I'm out there exploring, it gets really tiring on my back. And for this trip, I decided not to bring one of those. And it's been great. I feel so much lighter. So now I have turned off digital stabilization. I only have sensor shift enabled in its lowest stabilization setting. And this is what that looks like as I walk around with this camera. Talking a bit more about why this is so cool is that with this camera, this setup, I can actually just even repurpose a DJI mini bag and put this camera and a lens inside that little bag for like a day trip, day pack sort of thing when I'm exploring the city in Hanoi or something like that without having to bring my entire backpack. So another big pro. So this is me using the built-in mic on this camera, arm's length away. Overall, I think this is a great camera for travel. It does have its flaws, pros and cons, and it also has its flaws, but overall, I think it's pretty great. So I think it compensates mostly for all its computational photography modes and all these other features that it has, plus its small compact size. So yeah, this is the OM-3, a really good camera for travel that is compact and has a ton of features. And if you're still around, here are a couple more videos you could watch next, and I'll see you back in Canada.